by the intelligence agencies here in this country. More than 13,000 people have arrived on the small boat since January. 19 suspected terrorists are known to have crossed the channel. Foreign nationals were linked with groups including ISIS and many more who have since lodged asylum claims from coming here illegally cannot be deported, which leaves a rather bad taste in the mouth, doesn't it? Dr. Paul, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, we talk about the small boats pretty much every day here on Talk TV because there's always a story about whether it's the migrant barge being towed into Portland, whether it's the two cruise ships that have been refused permission to dock at Liverpool and Edinburgh, whether it's the numbers of people coming, the sheer monies that are being spent on hotels for them and all the rest of it. But this is a proper, really serious story, it seems to me.
Yes, I mean, the reason you talk about small boats so often, Mike, is because it's firstly an important issue, but secondly one that the government struggled to resolve. And that leads us really onto the debate around terrorism. And if you've got large numbers of people entering the country who you don't know very much about, that is clearly a problem. And what we're beginning to see, the government published a relaunch of its contest strategy yesterday, and Suella Braverman covered some of this, is people coming into the country who, in some cases, we have, I think, been able to identify via fingerprinting, who have connections with extremist groups, Islamic State, etc., etc. If you look at the most devastating period of terrorist attacks in Europe, it was when Islamic State was in control of territory in the Middle East, in Syria, and it sent its fighters via migration routes through southern Europe and then up into France and Belgium, where they carried out attacks. So this is a real threat, and it's a reminder of just how important it is to solve that small boats crisis.
Absolutely right. But of course, if you are one of those people who think that open borders are a great idea and that we should welcome anyone that wants to come here because surely they have a chance and an opportunity to better their lives, you know, you and I would be registered as bigots and racists and, you know, nasty people. Surely everybody deserves a second chance at life. Well, actually, no. If terrorists are actively, you know, using this as a route to get to Britain, then obviously we have to stop them.
Well, no individual, Mike, leaves their front door open on a routine basis, but some people seem to expect the country more generally to do this. One of the things that we've argued, there was a policy exchange report, Rakib Sam, who I know you have on very often, wrote recently on the small boats crisis. And as well as detailing the financial impact on all of us, but particularly on working class communities, one of the things we call for in there is the prevent duty, part of our counter-extremism policies, to be extended to the immigration service. So people working in the immigration service are properly trained in identifying extremists, so as they can understand who they're dealing with, that they can look out potentially for radicalised individuals or those who may be encouraging others on an extremist path. And until we give our civil servants the sort of proper tools and the political will to carry out government instruction and strategy, we are at risk, I'm afraid, both from extremists themselves, but also those sorts of wishy-washy ideas that you've just outlined.
Right. And what is the current state of that sort of land in what they called the Levant, which was kind of between Iraq and Syria, where ISIS had their kind of headquarters, where they had their Islamic State? What does that actually look like now?
Well, much of that is controlled by the Kurds. Now, the Syrian government, I think, has if you like, survived the civil war, the Assad regime, but perhaps the main player in the region now is probably the Turks, who seem to take a rather contrary position on extremism and security, very focused on attacking the Kurds, who are no international threat whatsoever, and who have differing relations with the various Islamist and jihadist groups, and are sometimes accused of being far too permissive towards them. What's noticeable, however, in terms of Islamic State is its rise of influence in Africa, and in particular East Africa. And that may well pose a significant threat in the years to come, that there are jihadists who are regrouping there, and really looking to repeat what they did in the Middle East in Africa.
Yes, and so, I mean, the force as we knew it of ISIS has more or less dissipated then, has it?
It has. I mean, it was interesting in the report yesterday and Suella Braverman's speech, she did touch on both Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, and the characterisation really of a threat that was lesser than it was from that particularly bad period in the middle part of the last decade, 2015 to 2017, but a threat that's greater than it has been. And what characterises terrorist groups, particularly jihadist groups, is almost a sort of an extreme addiction to patience and persistence. So these groups are never really totally defeated. They have a tendency to endure and to ebb and flow. And the feeling seems to be that there's a little bit of momentum for some of these groups again now.
Right. And I mean, if there is a threat to national security because of the fact that some of these terrorists are coming across to Britain illegally across the Channel, surely that's enough of a reason for the government to put more effort into stopping them, as opposed to saying they're going to stop them and then not stopping them.
Well, there's unfortunately clear evidence from some of the terrorist attacks that we've had over the past 5 years since the previous contest review. You had the botched suicide bombing in Liverpool, which was carried out by somebody who'd come from the Middle East and was going at snail's pace through the asylum system. The murder of the 3 gay men in the park in Reading, much the same, but with somebody from Libya. Yeah. So it's not as if the government doesn't know, and it's not as if the public doesn't know that the problem has been solving the issue of small boats and more generally immigration, because the figures are so high now, net immigration figures every year in the hundreds of thousands. It's almost inevitable that some bad people are going to get through, and those tasked with stopping them are really looking for a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, absolutely right. And as far as the sort of the threat level goes, we're told that it's kind of on the rise again. It's been a relative period of calm terrorist-wise. I mean, I don't like to tempt fate, but it hasn't been too bad last few years.
No, and this is something we've seen before. There wasn't a deadly attack in the UK after 7/7 until 2013 when Lee Rigby was killed.
Yeah.
So, touch wood, we haven't had a deadly terrorist attack since the murder of David Amos MP in late 2021. But it's quite clear from the government's report that the authorities are disrupting plots, and also that there are lots of people out there who still wish to do us harm.
Yes, and I'm afraid that's never going to change, is it? It looks as though that we're stuck with that for the rest of the time. Dr. Paul Stott, thank you very much indeed, Head of Security and Extremism at Policy Exchange. Britain's spies foiling an average of 8 terror attacks a year, it says this, amid disturbing signs of a resurgence of Al-Qaeda and possibly ISIS operatives coming to this country on small boats, unchecked because they throw their papers away, are immediately put on a bus, immediately taken to a hotel, immediately provided with food and comfort, while rest of the country struggles to earn a living and struggles to pay for various bills that are going up and up and up and up.